So my message for the internet, I would say, the people who are like listening to different sides on the internet, this discussion should not happen over posts and comments. Like, that is a trap. That is a trap that leads more to like worrying about getting attention and engagement on posts and not actually providing solutions. Like, you can't just say that your post is the solution without discussing it with everyone that it can affect. Like, you have to discuss it. There's so many different ways that it can play out, and I think just like taking a step back, being like, that doesn't solve anything. What does solve things? Well, actual communication with real people who are like on the ground experiencing it. That's like what we should be putting our effort towards. And I think that's why like guys like Joe Rogan have such a huge platform, because it's like, that's the only way to get real information. You get experts in, you have a conversation with them that is not hostile, and you try and understand their perspective.
Perspective. That's what this is all about. After my last meeting with Leo Vieira, I wanted to go to another end of the spectrum and talk to someone who had been very vocal about the situation from the very beginning. In this episode, Legion Jiu-Jitsu founder Keenan Cornelius discusses Jiu-Jitsu in the COVID-19 era.
Yeah, well, I mean, the situation requires so much context, right? So it's been 2 months, I think, since we shut down, or approaching that. Like, we're getting up there, coming up on 2 months. My initial feelings towards the whole situation was like, approach it with caution and wait for more information. And now we're at a point where it's kind of becoming more apparent that everyone's going to need to just invoke their individual rights to do what's best for them, you know? So when I made the decision to close the gym, it was before there was cases all over the US. Like, they weren't recorded cases. There was a few people here and there. It seemed like, well, this is super contagious. There's a few cases that's going to turn into a lot more cases. New York started having a pretty big outbreak. And as that started to arise, it was pretty obvious that the only way to deal with something like this was to be prepared ahead of time. So it's like, well, the one thing we can do now is hope that it's not as widespread as it could be, and then act preemptively. So I figured, well, jiu-jitsu gyms is a place this could spread really quickly if we don't really know. So we should probably stop those things first, like things that are super close contact. So that was the initial idea. Now we're reaching a point where it's like, okay, we're reaching this zone where there's not enough testing, so we don't have enough information, and now the economic impacts are becoming apparent. Gyms are closing, businesses are closing, hair salons are going out of business, people are getting arrested to try and open up their business because they have to feed their kids. Like, more information has arisen, and I think it's just really ignorant to like put some sort of blanket thing over the whole situation. So I'm on the side of individual rights and freedoms, and I think we have to maintain that. I think that's what makes America great, and I think that agility and flexibility on a human level and not on a government level is what allows the US to adapt quickly to new things.
I don't think this was the opinion most people were expecting to hear from Keenan, especially because he was one of the very first jiu-jitsu business owners in the nation to voluntarily close a school before it was mandated by the state. Unfortunately, with social media, anytime you make a decision, it seems like you'll likely get painted into a box. And now that's where you're supposed to stay, without getting a chance to evolve as you gather more information.
In the beginning, I think there's like, you should at least communicate with them and be like, listen, like right now, no one is in a position to, like, a lot of people don't know what this is yet. There's a lot of people at risk that don't know. But then now we move past that, it's like, well, you can't keep those situations in place. Like, it has to disperse back to normality, and normality is individual rights and freedom. Because I took that stance in the beginning, I'm like instantly grouped in the close forever side for some reason. That's just not accurate. That's not how I think. I deal with information and I adjust my opinion and I adjust my actions based on the information to try and get the best possible outcome for me and my community. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, I dove deep into this. Like, I have been researching for the entire 2 months that we've been shut down. That's all I've been doing, is trying to understand what is happening. Like, that's all I've been doing. So it's just incredibly frustrating for people who want to like use their streams of influence through social media or video or online, anything online. I mean, that's how we all communicate, it's online. But it seems like you can only have a real conversation face to face. Like, I don't get to have this conversation with people online. None of my followers get to hear this. Like, unless I go and do a podcast and talk specifically about it. And then if you talk specifically about it, it's like, oh, you're being political. Like, we don't want to hear that. Like, we want to hear about jiu-jitsu. It's like, well, this is a situation that affects jiu-jitsu heavily, and there needs to be long-form discussion about it.
I may be overly optimistic, but I generally believe that most humans are good people. But the lockdown seemed to have created a perfect storm where people stuck at home are trying to have a dialogue on platforms that incite more rage than consensus. Imagine if every important conversation that led to crucial policy that affected your life happened in the comment section of social media.
There's this whole online agenda of like interaction and engagement, and that drives traffic to your sponsors or like your product. And the internet is just an untrustworthy place because it's too directly connected with money and viewership. So it's like you can use it to like push your beliefs and your opinions, but then there's also some people that will use it purely for chaos to just drive traffic to their thing. And they're almost unapologetic about it, because it's like sometimes people online can be like, say something crazy, causes a bunch of ruckus, and then at the end of it, they can just be like, haha, you guys are all stupid, I was just trolling. So I asked Gordon and I said, let's go on a podcast and talk about it. Like, let's actually talk about it, get each other's side so people actually get to know. But that's a different situation. He's just like, no, I'm just gonna keep saying my thing, because he's very motivated by the traffic that it gets. That's like his entire thing. It's like, I wanna be like the marketing guy and like get my name out there constantly, make sure everyone's talking about me constantly so he can sell his DVDs. And that's fine. And there's a place for that, because maybe that's his livelihood. Like, no one really knows how this is affecting Gordon specifically. Like, he'll say, oh, I'm rich, whatever. But it's like, that's not really how it works, because there's an uncertainty for everyone who does jiu-jitsu right now. It doesn't matter if you have money or not. Like, I made good money from jiu-jitsu, but I'm aware that this can affect my future. And so is he. He's not a stupid person, you know? So let's just like stop tricking people and stop like putting information out there in a way that it can't be analyzed and discussed, and actually have a real conversation about what's good for jiu-jitsu overall. Like, what's actually good.
The influence some of the personalities in the jiu-jitsu community have on their followers is pretty undeniable. For outsiders looking in, I'm sure some might even say jiu-jitsu has some sort of cult-like hierarchy of influence. I believe it's important for people to separate the great athlete or the professor they admire from their opinion sometimes, especially when it comes to something that's out of their realm of expertise.
In jiu-jitsu, there's already another issue of like hero worship of the black belts in the gym, and they're like God as far as making decisions, and they have more life experience and they're good at jiu-jitsu, so they know more. And there's also just the tribal component. It's like there's the leader of the tribe and he kind of makes the decisions, and there's sort of an artificial primate type thing going on in jiu-jitsu, and it's something that you only really experience when you're in it for a while, because when you're new, even the first couple of years, you don't really see it yet. But there's almost like a psychological component to jiu-jitsu of how people act, and based on the belt level and your authority, and that's a whole different situation. But now in jiu-jitsu, it's like that has transcended to social media too. So it's like your followers also feel that way about you sometimes. And if you get drunk with that power, you can really abuse it, just like many gym owners abuse it. Well, here's the thing, is we're all white belts in life. Right? Like, no one's a master of living. Like, there's too much stuff going on. There's too many social interactions. There's too many personalities. There's too many problems. No one can just navigate it perfectly. And so anyone that's going out there and saying that their way is the way to do it is probably wrong. It's just, you're probably wrong. If it was really that good of an idea, everyone would be doing it already. The issue is, it doesn't apply to everyone. No idea right now applies to everyone. It has to be your personal choice. We are individuals. Do you really think people are going to Tanner's gym right now if they're worried about getting sick? No. The people who are there know what's going on. Everyone knows what's going on. And if you're going and being around other people, you know, we all know, like, we're all here, we know that we can get sick. We can get each other sick. But we made the conscious decision. It's like, well, if we get sick, at least I know I'm in a percentage of people that is very, very unlikely to die from it.
Although it does feel comforting knowing that I'm in a specific young and healthy demographic who is not likely to die from COVID, I still know that I have members at my academy who are asthmatic or older and may have pre-existing health conditions, which may be the very reason why they joined jiu-jitsu in the first place. Now, with everything crashing to a halt and with so much unproductive infighting online, I hope we learn to listen to understand rather than to listen to merely craft a like-seeking rebuttal. As Leo Vieira had said before, In this situation, there is no wrong and there is no right. It's a new situation to everybody. To me, one thing is clear. Actually having a real conversation with someone, this is how progress is made. So Keenan, what would you like to leave the internet with?
I would say just the most important thing right now is for anyone that seems to be, like if you identify with, like everyone identifies with a different group for different reasons. You know, people are worried about different threats. Some people are really worried about the government not conceding the control back to the people over a reasonable amount of time. Some people are worried about their children. Some people are freaked out by the media and the news, and is that trustworthy, or does that have some sort of agenda? Like, there's so many different things and perceptions that you can take on this thing, and then it's getting condensed down to, we should reopen or we should stay inside. Like, how is that going to solve anything? Like, you can't condense it down to that. And I don't think it's not any one person's idea. It's just like some sort of feedback loop in our society that leads us into like two separate entities fighting against each other in almost any important global discussion. If you go actually have a conversation face to face with someone you know that maybe you haven't seen in a while, they're going to have a different perception than you. If you want to have a discussion, you have to talk to the people that you want to discuss it about. You can't just go on their platform and expect it to work itself out. The way people get their information on social media, and in large part that's a good thing because you can kind of see everyone's different opinions, but then you also see like tribalism where these two sides go at each other's throats to where it's not a safe place for people to talk without feeling threatened. So it's like you're inadvertently silencing people's opinions by making sure that you fall into one camp or the other because that's the only safe way to put your opinion out there, or so it seems. So it's just the perception of our information, the perception of technology and how it actually affects our ability to communicate with each other and make progress. Like, how much is it hurting and how much is it helping? And it seems to me that, like, I've taken a step back from it. It's like, okay, I only want to talk with people who actually want to talk with me. So, like, if someone wants to talk with me and I have a real conversation, let's do it.